Okay, tonight we're going to be talking about the price of nice. And I'm going to be talking about really what I think is a diseased kind of way of life, which is a very common way of life. And I want to start off, I had Karen write some of the nice mass murderers that we've had in recent years. I want to read you a few things about this, like Dwayne Pope. On the morning of June 4th, 1967, he walked into a Big Springs, Nebraska bank. He walked over to the bank president's desk and inquired about a farm loan. When he was told that they didn't make farm loans, he took a gun from his case and calmly pointed at the banker. The tellers emptied their drawers of $1,598. He motioned everyone to lie down on the floor on their stomachs. Then, with a .22 Sturm Rudger gun equipped with a silencer, he shot Andy Kelgard, Frank Kelgard, the 25-year-old nephew, Miss Louis Ann Hotham, Glenn Henderson, a 59-year-old cashier. He shot them each twice, once in the neck and once in the back to get to the heart. As he walked out of the bank, he said good morning to a wheat farmer. And within 36 hours, the FBI knew who the killer was. The people from his hometown were incredulous. They all remembered him as an amiable, quiet young man who had worked his way through college on a scholarship by sweeping classrooms and hauling trash. He had been co-captain of the football team in his senior year. Dwayne was someone who the college and the community looked up to as a representative of the worth and dignity of the American small college and the American small town. Well, everybody knows something about Charlie Whitman, but the interesting thing about Whitman was that he was called by everybody that was interviewed, even his father, who obviously there was some kind of an issue going on between Charles Whitman and his father, a real all-American boy, that if you really want to know about this man, if you want to know what an all-American boy is, look at Charlie Whitman. Of course, he killed 14 people after killing his wife and his mother, and he wounded 30 others. Mark James Robert Essex, his 17-year-old girlfriend Lydia remarked, I just say it's not him. He's too nice, he's too sweet, and he's too kind. He's just too nice. If I hadn't seen it happen, I wouldn't believe it. And yet Essex had kept the city terrorized for hours on top of the Howard Johnson Motel. Before his body was finally riddled with bullets, there were at least 6 dead and 9 others wounded. Juan Corona was a taciturn farm contractor. His commitment to the church was obsessive. He said his rosary every night with his family. He went to Mass 3 times a week and had recently won a trophy for float decoration at the annual Our Lady of Guadalupe parade. Married and the father of 4 daughters, he was an active member of a group called the Cursilas, who were trying to revive religion among the Chicanos. In January 1973, he was convicted of having slaughtered at least 25 men. The faces and chests of these itinerant farm workers had been hacked with a heavy knife-like machete. In his labor camp in his 1971 van, police had found an arsenal consisting of 2 hunting knives, 2 butcher knives, a double-bladed axe, a club with blood stains, pistol shots, and a machete. He was an exemplary father and a fine Christian, everyone said. Charles Tex Watson, his mother's pride and joy. You know about Watson. Photographs of the baby-faced Watson taken at his high school in Farmerville, Texas, reflected an all-American boy, a big, good-looking kid who starred in football, basketball, and track. He got all A's and B in school. He was a regular churchgoer at the Methodist church near his brother's little grocery store. And then Leo Held was a killer of 6 people on October the 23rd, 1967, in the town of Lock Haven, Pennsylvania. He was a father of 4 children. He was active in the Boy Scout movement. He terrorized 2 communities with a 90-minute shooting rampage during which he killed 6 people. He was described as a quiet and peaceful man, as nice a man as you would ever want to meet, devoted to his family. Now, that's about the dramatic as dramatic and extreme as I can present to you on the problem that we're going to look at tonight. And basically what we're going to look at, because none of these men were let off for insanity or anything like that. Those kind of pleas just didn't work. What we have here are incidences probably of people who have been repressing anger all their lives, have been repressing anger, been repressing their own desires, have been repressing their own instinctual life, if you will, all of their life. And see, what we know is that when a child is not allowed to have their normal kind of instinctual energy, and then that energy has got to go somewhere. And it's like it goes into our bodies as a kind of powder keg. And we know, Carl Jung said this beautifully, that any part of us that we do not love unconditionally becomes alienated from us and becomes more and more primitive. Becomes more and more primitive. So let's say that you've never been allowed to have your your sadness. That every time you cried, somebody distracted you from crying. That every time you cried, somebody punished you for crying. And so what happened is that you were not allowed to have your sadness. Well, then that part of you splits off, as it were. It becomes like an alien. It's like you have something living within you that is an alien. It's an alien part of you. Now, as life goes on, that part of you picks up energy, as it were. Because you have to avoid it. You have to hold it down. You have to over-identify with the opposite part. You start over-identifying with the opposite part. If you have a forbidden part, then you will tend to over-identify with the opposite part. I remember once when Bill Curley and I were arguing with Walter Mengen about some textbooks, and the issue was around sex education. And as we walked out, there was a little Irish nun there who whispered to me as we walked out. She said, "I bet he's a wife swapper." Which was quite unusual for an Irish nun to be laying that on. But Walter was leading a group of people who were very upset because these textbooks had words in them like penis and vagina. You know, they had these anatomically technical, correct names. And so Bill and I were, we were arguing that, that was altogether good. And again, it was the idea that often people who are fighting smut are obsessed with it. And we've seen that recently, on sort of major television. We've seen this polarity. How somebody who's screaming just the opposite stuff is actually over here acting out. And in the data that's been presented on Jimmy Swaggart, for example, that he's been acting out since he was 8 years old. He's been acting out in this manner. But here's the polarity over here of just absolutely condemning everybody for anything that even smacks of sexuality. You see the over-identification with the other part. So it's like if you can't have your sexuality, read Gail Sheehy's account in Vanity Fair of Gary Hart, of the way he was raised. Now, she doesn't call it sexual compulsivity, but I guarantee you in our model it's sexual compulsivity. That what you're looking at is sexual compulsivity. Somebody that is so out of control that he cannot even protect himself any longer with that compulsivity. Now, his upbringing was very rigid and very religious and a very sort of offbeat Christian religion that was the most, it made Puritanism, look like a wild orgy. So So like what you have is that incredible repression of sexuality. See, I grew up in a very repressed kind of environment myself, and when I hit about 13 or 14, I was down at the red light district with the boys, and then at 21, I went to a monastery. See, so I was either wild, crazy, going crazy over here, or in a monastery, celibate. See, and it's like all or nothing. See how the parts get over-identified with? It's like you're all... So one day, you see, Virginia Satir says, when that part becomes alien, it's like a wolf in the basement that you have to watch. So like if you have no permission for sexuality, let's say in your family, you had no permission for your talk about your sexuality, or no permission to enjoy your sexuality in any way, then that becomes an alien part. It becomes an alien member of the ecology, which is yourself. I just finished the chapter of a book where I'm talking about that each one of us is a family system. That is, each one of us have all these different parts in there. We have parent parts, we have child parts, we have adult parts, we have what Stone and Winkleman call the protector-controller part, the heavyweights, the pusher, the criticizer, the perfectionist part, and then we have a playful child part, we have a wounded child part, we have a vulnerable child part, and those are the parts that get split off because they're not acceptable. See, we need to love ourselves unconditionally, and there's nobody that's any gooder than they're badder. Not good English, but it gets the point across. The idea is that there's nobody that has this part that doesn't also have this part. You can't have this part without this part. And we got to, these are the all-American boys. See, what is fashionable? What are the words you hear people say? That is the nicest doctor. That is the nicest guy. Oh, I met the nicest guy. How many of you have met a nice guy that has become a horror story in your life? Okay? So we could get a bunch of hands on that. How many guys met a nice gal that, yeah, you wished God you'd never met her? Okay? Because you see, and that's all, and why we keep getting conned by that, I don't know. But I mean, people do. Like if you want to say something about somebody, you say they're so nice. They're so nice. That's the nicest therapist. Be careful. I mean, my therapist is a nasty bastard. I mean, he just confronts the hell out of me. And so I've quit him 28 times now. I keep going back because I really know the guy is there for me. But he just absolutely pops it back. And it's really important for me to have that in my life. Have somebody that's just not going to be, carried away by anything other than what's really going on. And but this idea of that's the nicest couple, the Farquhars. Aren't they nice? Let's go out with the Farquhars. And then, and you go over to their house and they are nice. And then about 10 years later, they're divorcing and you're going, I can't believe it. Not the Farquhars. You've got to be kidding. I mean, how could they be? You see, because again, we are taught culturally to be nice. Be nice. So what's one of the most common things you heard growing up? Now, some of you may not have heard this, but if you can't say something nice, don't say anything at all. Now think about that. Think about that as a rule to grow up with. Now think about that. That assumes there's never going to be anything unnice in your family. And that if there is, you can never talk about it. I mean, that's a real great setup for the parents, so that they don't ever hear it. How would you like to have that at your office? So you never hear any complaining. I mean, what a setup. So it's a very, very dominant way that we have been conditioned, and that we've come to measure people in terms of this niceness, being nice, smiling with a kind of parrot-like vocabulary, and this kind of false act, because we know that it's an act a lot of the time, and that's an act. It's certainly an act when I'm doing it a lot of the time. I mean, how many of you have said to somebody, you know, sort of like, oh, well, it's been so great to see you, and I just can't, we just got to get together again. And then you got in the car. And you said, God, isn't he boring? You know, God, she is really weird, isn't she? And you just had a great time going home talking about him. And boy, do nice people do that a lot. A lot of taking people's inventory and talking about them. And see, because remember, there's this hungry dog in the basement. There's this wolf in the basement. Now I talked about sexuality. Hal Stone talks about, as this alien energy goes on through your life, it becomes more and more demonic. It's like the energy builds, it becomes stronger and stronger. It builds, it becomes stronger and stronger. And then you see these men are overcome. It's like they're possessed. Now, while we don't go up on towers or go into banks and execute people, but how many of you have had it happen where you said something like, God, I don't know what happened today, but boy, I really lost it. Man, did I lose it today. Or with a spouse or with your kids. And my God, you were chasing them around the house, and you were chasing them from room to room, and you couldn't stop. You couldn't stop. It's like, God help you when somebody's doing this, especially somebody that's been gunny sacking for years. You know, you could be getting anger for 15 years ago that's unexpressed. And you know, I give the example, you know, you come home and you're just late, and all of a sudden somebody's got enough stamps and they're going crazy. They're cashing in the whole gunny sack on you. And they're not just saying you were late, they're saying in 1974 at Aspen you brought your mother with us on our vacation. I've never forgiven you for that. And you're going, geez, you know, and I'm never going to another Oiler game with you either. I'm sick of those. But you never told me that before. God. And you want to get out of there. You know, get out of there because they're following you from room to room. And they're just hitting you with one thing and stuff from years past. This stuff is all dated. Now, by the way, that is very common behavior for a nice guy or a sweetheart. That's very common. And it's very common to have it happen when you just don't know what happened, when you least expect it. You know, it's like, God, I can't believe that. Like one of the things that I tried to be to my, I was going to be the nicest daddy that ever lived. I didn't have a father. I was going to make it up, by being the most wonderful father to my children. And what would happen is I would be the nice daddy. And they would do things, like I punctured one of your tires. Oh, it's okay. We can get another tire. See how nice I am? God, and so I had this fantasy, because part of being nice is what we call impression management, which is the core of codependency. It's one of the cores of codependency. It's like a lot of my behavior is the impression I'm making with you. And so with a lot of nice people, it's almost like they're split selves, which they are. I mean, when I'm in my nice guy act, I'm in a dissociated state. And I'm in an act. And there's another part of me kind of watching. And the other part's going, God, isn't he nice? And it's like, oh, they're going to think he is really so nice. I mean, my God, he is nice. So I would do that with my children and just be the nicest daddy you've ever seen until I had enough stamps saved. That's the way the TA people talk about it. You save stamps. And what do you get to do when you have enough stamps? You get to cash them in. Now, my nice guy, a lot of my nice guy comes from the tradition that I came out of that said anger was one of the 7 deadly sins. And, you know, when nuns are showing you pictures of people burning in hell, I don't know where Sister Ida got these, but she had a whole sheaf of shit. I mean, it was just, and it was people burning in hell. You know, they're charred, mangled bodies. And boy, did she, you know, and I think her deal was to scare the devil out of us. Well, it terrified me, absolutely terrified me. And then Sister Rogata once passed an x-ray of a cancerous lung around the room. I don't know where the hell she got this either. But it was heinous looking, and had all this charred mass in there. And she said, "That's what your soul looks like under mortal sin." She was a very nice nun. Anger, one of the 7 deadly sins, number 1, 7 deadlies, big anger. So boy, I registered that very, very clearly, that we're not going to do an anger anymore, because I don't want to burn in hell. I don't want my lungs getting charred. So what I learned to do is the opposite of that, is to be nice. Be nice. See, when parents can make children be nice, it's a way to control them. I was in a family about 15 years ago. I'll never forget this. They were sitting at the table. We were eating, and one of the kids is kind of goofing off. And this father did no more than lift his left eyebrow. I've never seen anything like this. This was awesome. He just lifts this left eyebrow, and this kid, boom! This kid just went right back to just perfect. I mean, he just went right back into being nice. And a lot of times when parents are correcting kids, that's what they'll say: be nice. Can't you be nice? Why can't you be nice? But it's like, have you ever been in a family where the kids are like these little robots? Mom says it's time for bed, and they go, and they go upstairs. Now that's frightening you. I mean, that is frightening, because those are all potential mass killers in the making. That's right. Like lots of times when I'm out in crowded places, I punch somebody with, I'll say, "There's a potential mass murderer right over there. So watch out. See that guy over there? That's a potential mass murderer." And I'm looking for him all the time. See, because that's not normal for children to be little robots like that. It's terribly difficult to raise children. It's the hardest job anybody will ever do in their whole life. And you've got to be extremely healthy for it. And a blood test don't get it. This is not a good preparation for parenting. But it's not a good preparation for marriage either. But it's what we get to get married and have children. And so you have to be very healthy to have children, because when a lot of this stuff starts developing, God, you write nice, Karen. Where's Karen? When a lot of this stuff starts developing, is really in the point where children begin to separate. Children go through a period where they express a lot of anger, they tantrum. And what we know is that in the developmental cycle, I see some of you did the inner child this weekend, where this is the bonding stage. So from birth to about 8 months, children bond. And what that means is this is like a perfect codependency stage for a child. The child literally is symbiotic. I am you in this stage. Child has no sense of separation yet. Actually, at about 6 months, the kid will start biting. And biting, from oral incorporation to biting, mother will move back. And especially if he's nursing, mother will move back. And as the child bites, the other person will move back or maybe even fuss at him. So the biting is a very significant moment where separation is starting. And we know that up till, a certain point, 6 months is really a critical time. Children can have a good mothering person up to about 6 months, but after 6 months they really do bond with their very own mother or that mothering person. If you take that mothering person away from them after 6 months, it is much more significant than before, because there's a bonding that starts happening as the child separates. Now, about 8 months to 18 months is an exploratory stage where children are out starting to crawl and touching. It's sensory acuity, like they're eating stuff and smelling stuff and touching things, and it is really a very, very important stage. It's why Montessori's set up environments where there are all these interesting things. Like parents really here should set up a Montessori environment. If you really wanted to set it up healthy for your kids, have a couple of rooms that are child-proof, that have just a variety of sensory, like a little cornucopia. And like I talked to people who didn't get this developmental stage. You had very anxious, nervous parents who never got it themselves. So what you got when you began to crawl out, you see, now crawling out is the way you begin to explore the world. And if you got things like, watch out, don't toss the window, get him off there, look out, oh my God, he's going to die, he's going to fall off the window. See, your just natural exploratory sense would get curtailed. I mean, it's like, so like one of the traits of codependency is you don't know what you want. I say, what do you want? I don't know what I want. See, if children who are allowed to really want and touch and taste and smell here are really connected with their own desires and their own wants. Also, children here who get shamed or terrified by their parents' anxiety, their parents' over-coercion, their endless stream of anxious reminders, endless streams of anxious reminders. What you do is you just shut down. And then you take what people say to you like suggestions, you'll take them like absolutes. So if somebody suggests something to you, you go do it. And sometimes in 12-step work, I've seen people who have about 7 sponsors. A sponsor is somebody who helps a person in a 12-step program. Like if you go in a 12-step program, it's suggested that you look at somebody and you really like their style of recovery and you ask them to be your sponsor. And the sponsor sort of helps you to work your program. Well, I've seen people who have 8 or 9 sponsors, and every day they're calling 9 people and getting advice and doing it. And I'm saying, listen, I would be crazy if I was you. I mean, this guy told you to do this gal told you to do this, and you're trying to do all those things. See, because again, this exploratory stage, child needs to be able to go wherever they go. Like if you didn't get these needs met, I encourage people to practice getting them met. How do you practice getting them met? You practice like go to a department store and eat everything you get your hands on. Touch everything you can. Wander around the store, pick everything up. Try everything on that you want to try on. You want to go do your exploratory stuff again. It's like being a 2-year-old again. It's like being a 9-month-old. But the crucial period really is the next part of this stage. Beginning at about 18 months and going to 3 years, children start saying no. Now, in my life, this has been a major problem to me, saying no. See, because I'm so nice. Like, if you ask me to do something, I will almost always say yes. Not anymore. I mean, I'm really doing well with this in the last 7 or 8 years of recovery from it. But 10 years ago, I would say yes, and then I would manipulate or lie to get out of it. Any of you identify with that? You don't have to raise your hands. You don't have to raise your hands, but do you get it that part of the first boundary, see, a child begins separation here. And this separation is what we call psychological birth. There's physical birth, but now we're going to begin psychological birth. What do you need to have psychological birth? You need to be separate. You can no longer stay enmeshed and bonded with mama. You need to be separate. So the way that a child starts separating is to say, no, I won't. And then here's another real important thing that children start doing. They start saying, that's mine. That's mine. You see that? See how that's a boundary? That's mine. That's mine. No, that's mine. That's mine. That's mine. That's mine. And they will really stake out and test their boundaries. Now, obviously, you need real healthy parents here, because you need a mother and a daddy here. Because for a mother to handle this alone is just tough. And lots of mothers are handling it alone. But this is really one of the places where we're really seeing so clearly why you need a mother and a daddy. That a mama needs to be reinforced by a daddy and needs help during this period. My mama was 18 when she had her first child. She was 19 when she had me. At 22, she had 3 children, an alcoholic husband. God, who had completely abandoned us. Well, she didn't know what to do. I mean, she did the best she knew how to do. But, in my family, this all was considered original sin. This is the perversity of children that you have to beat out of them. You have to beat this out of them, because this is the effects of original sin. This is that you're stained and you have a certain propensity toward, I want what I want when I want it, and if you don't discipline children here, they'll become mass murderers. Well, the fact is that over-discipline here will create mass murderers. It's just the opposite of what we've been doing. It's like the more you repress this energy, it becomes demonic. It becomes like an alien force, primitive force dominating the personality. So that the person is walking around with this over-identified part. They're acting out the opposite part. See, I never get angry. Like in my life, I have a terrible time getting angry. I'm doing better in my older age. But, oh my gosh, I've been anger-phobic for years. See, nice guys, we don't get angry. You can just walk all over us. And we're just such good guys that we'll talk it out with you. And it's like sometimes it takes me a day and a half before I know I'm angry. I'll go, God darn it, you know what that guy did Saturday? And it's like all of a sudden I'm in touch with the anger. But it'll be a day and a half later. It's like I get in touch with the energy a day and a half later. Because again, I was terrified, you see. Now, I also became a rager. I'm the nice guy who, after doing weeks and weeks and weeks of letting my kids walk over me, would start raging. Now, I never got up in a tower and started shooting people. But the raging to children is a violent act. It's a violent act. It's the demonic. See, it's that energy that's coming out, and it's totally disproportionate to anything that's happening. And so it's very crazy making for children. And it's also this. It's like the children cannot trust you anymore. See, they may go 6 weeks and you're this wonderful daddy, and then all of a sudden they do one thing and you go crazy. And so deep down, see, that child will say, whew. Because children, I hate to even say this, children internalize their parents at their worst. Why? Because their survival is so much on the line. So those times when we were really out of control and crazy are the times that the child's been imprinted the most powerfully. So my raging to my children absolutely negated every moment of being a nice guy with them. Because what they remember, what has been imprinted, and I'm not going to go into this tonight, but what we know in doing original pain work, we do a lot of original pain work here, is that the trauma gets imprinted. And because survival is so much the issue, that the anatomical structure of the brain literally changes with that early trauma. The pain-mediating cells, the chemistry of the brain will really even change, because if a child's being raised with this kind of stuff, even if you only rage 4 times a year, which is about what I did, it is still so frightening to the children. And I had some of it myself growing up. I grew up with nice people. People who went to church every Sunday, and my granddaddy went to church every day and prayed the rosary when Stalin died, and nice family. And so what I was taught is that none of these feelings, it's not okay to say no, never to say no to an adult. See, I was taught to respect any adult simply because they were an adult. Now that is a very common teaching. Maybe you didn't get that one. But, when I read Alice Miller's For Your Own Good and the life of Hitler and how Hitler could have happened, and when you look at the structure of the German family, you understand how a Hitler could happen. You understand how Auschwitz and Dachau, which is another kind of mass murder, could happen. And if you haven't read Alice Miller's For Your Own Good, it's called For Your Own Good. Hidden Cruelties in Child Rearing is the subtitle of it. I read this book. I was on a vacation in London, and I absolutely couldn't. I just kept going back and reading the book. And Nancy would say, "Are you going to go back and read that book? And you're all depressed." I can't help it. I got to go read it. Because it was just like, my God, it was, and it's a book filled with quotation from 19th century theologians who are talking about beating children and beating the devil out of them. Talking about how you handle children, how you pinch them until they become silent. And when I was running the Sunday school at Palmer Church, we had a guy there who was always fighting me when I was talking. I would give them little sort of instructions about some of our Sunday school stuff, but also about discipline. I wanted the Sunday school to be very different than secular school. We were celebrating the good news of salvation here, not gastric acidity. And so what I wanted was that this would be a real special little place every week that they come, where there's celebration and love and unconditional acceptance. Well, I had this guy, and he had about 13-inch shoes. And in a foxhole in Korea, he had vowed to God to devote his life to God. And so one of the ways he decided to do that was to teach Sunday school. And the way that he got discipline is he walked over and he stood on a kid's foot until the child was paralyzed with fear and the whole room got quiet. And I suggested to him that might not be the greatest experience of the Christ, that the child would want to have. And that maybe there were some other alternatives to crushing feet. I also was worried about the personal injury, suits that we might get at Palmer Church. And another place I consulted, they gave as the best attendance at some Sunday school, a .22 rifle was awarded a boy for best attendance at Sunday school. So there's something about our culture that has a lot of this passive-aggressive rage in it and violence in it that doesn't come out when you're hanging around good old boys. See, it's like there's a polarity there, there's a split there that ain't together. And so growing up in a family like this, I become very passive-aggressive, which is a kind of behavior where you're angry, but you're not expressing the anger directly. It's like you drop the food all over the host that you don't like. And you go, "Oh my God, forgive me for doing," and they've got all this crud all over them. And passive-aggressive is really something to watch. I worked with a couple for a number of years in another town, Los Angeles, and it was just incredible. It was just this very petite little woman, and they had been fighting for 31 years. One of the rules of shame-based families is called incompletion. that if you want to see family dysfunction, one of the ways you'll see it is that the same fight goes on for generations even. But it'll certainly go on during the lifetime of the couple. We call it the game without end. And it's she bitches and nags and he won't talk, and he won't talk because she bitches and nags, and she bitches and nags because he won't talk. See, and it's circular. It's like they're creating each other's behavior by what they're doing. But this guy was into herbal enemas, and he was very obsessive compulsive. He was very obsessive compulsive. And the catch was she had to prepare all the stuff. And I don't know why she didn't stuff it in his face, but that isn't what the therapist, is supposed to be saying, like, why don't you just kick him in the groin, That's not a known therapeutic intervention. But actually, she didn't need to, because she always got it wrong. She always got it wrong. It's like, I don't know what happened. Yes, I did put some quinine in his... and God, he'd be sorry. How could you get this wrong? I told you to cook it for 1 minute and 31 seconds. And she had cooked it for 2 minutes, and it was just the wrong... and it was driving... he was going crazy. And she would just kind of sit there and grin. And she was so nice. And she was getting this guy. I don't know where they are now, but he may be dead for all I know. Because, this little lady was powerful. Powerful. In fact, one of the very early therapies I had was with a passive-aggressive, what is called a yes-but player. And I was right out of the seminary, and this little lady came in. She was just this petite little thing, and I was afraid of women anyway. I've been in a monastery almost 10 years, so, I wasn't in good shape. And so this woman says, she said, "Oh, thank God I found you, You're the only person that can help me." So I really liked that, It's like, and so that got rid of all my insecurities. I said, "Yes, my dear, don't worry, you can call me any time of the day or night." Therapists do this for about the first year of practice. And then call me any time of the day or night. And every time she would come in, I would say, "Okay, well, now this week we're going to do, this assertive practice, and you just keep practicing this at home." And she'd come in, and I'd say, "Well, how did it go?" She'd say, "Well, I didn't have time. I had to do my ballet dancing, and for a while I was kind of going along with this, but the game is called yes, but. And no matter what you say, person says yes, but. And it's like I'd say, "Well, you think you look plain. Why don't you get your hair done?" "Well, I spent $50,000 on my hair in the last 10 years. "Okay, so yes, but that one." And after about a year of this, and I had tried praying with her on one occasion, which is also not an accepted, known therapeutic intervention. But actually, when I would see this lady coming out in the driveway, I would start trembling after a year. Now, this is a little bitty, helpless-looking person, that had come to me for help. And by the end of the thing, I was offering her money back. It's like, "God, please leave. Would you please go to someone else?" And so finally, I one day, in desperation, she'd call me at 3 in the morning or something and say, "I can't counsel you anymore." It's just exactly what you shouldn't do. And she said, "Well, you're just like all the rest." Now, this is the thing a therapist should check out the first day. How many people have you been to? 11 psychiatrists prior to me, and 5 ministers and a rabbi. So this little bitty lady had knocked off 11 psychiatrists, 5 ministers, and a rabbi, all by herself. All these educated therapists that are supposed to know all this stuff. Little passive-aggressive. Hated her father and was getting even with Dad. It's just clear as a bell. You just keep knocking off these authority figures. Boy, she had done it. She left a wake. We were sending communications around. If Guinevere Snodgrass comes in, for God's sake, don't counsel her. It was like it was a whole network going on. So, believe me, that nice people can be devastating. They can be devastating. So that as you don't get to express anger, see what I learned when I got angry, my mother withdrew her love. So I learned early on that anger means rejection and abandonment. And so I became anger phobic. See, a lot of my raging had been about being terrified, really. See, rage is terrified anger, really. It's like when you don't know what else to do. And it's like a person who's over-adapted, so there's so much energy in that alien part that when it comes out, it just comes out all disproportionate to anything that's going on. But if you don't learn here that conflict is okay, what every little bitty up at 3 years old should walk in, should walk into the next developmental stage knowing is that it's okay to be angry and you'll still be there when I'm angry. And that you can be angry at me and I can still stay here. That is, we can hang in there with anger, and that we can remedy, we can fight, we can remedy things, we can negotiate. And what a parent needs to be showing a child is some pattern of negotiation, of remedying. Like some of you have heard me say this ad nauseum. In my family, we didn't know how to remedy anything. If we have a fight, we don't talk for 3 weeks, 3 months, year and a half once. We don't talk. We don't talk to each other. And when I've had fights with friends, see, I've had a terrible time expressing anger to friends. Like I had a major victory 10 years ago of getting mad at my best friend. Because that was so terrifying to me. Like, because what that meant was abandonment, that there will be no friendship if we get angry. So basically you're setting up friendships that can't have anger in them. Now, also relationships, in-love relationships, that can't have any anger in them. Like Virginia Satir, the great family therapist, used to say that if you want me to tell you the number one ingredient of intimacy, it's the capacity to have conflict. It is the capacity to have conflict and to resolve conflict. It's the capacity to resolve conflict well. That people who know how to really be intimate have the ability to have conflict and resolve it. So again, here are patterns. I don't mean we should know them and be ace communicators by 3 years old, but in so many families, when the child begins to be rambunctious, here comes the repression. Here comes the shaming of the emotions. The shaming of anger especially. The shaming of assertiveness. Yeah, it could be, I used to have an aunt that any time I sort of said anything good about myself, would really say something about myself because I was proud of it. And she seemed to have an extremely long finger too. And she would just point it right in my face, and it seemed like it went on and on. And she would say, "Listen, mister, pride cometh before the fall." I didn't know what the snot that meant, but it sounded awful. It's like, ew. And it was like anytime you want to assert yourself, or, like in therapy now, we teach people to brag. Well, my God, we got cream for bragging. In my family, there was a taboo against loving yourself. Now we get it that you can't love anyone else if you don't love yourself. If I don't love myself, if I don't accept every part of me unconditionally, that's what Carl Jung was saying, if you can't love every part of you unconditionally, the place you start with unconditional love is with yourself. Then that part becomes alien, and that part becomes like a power all its own, and I am beside myself. It's like there's part of me beside me that's not part of me, because I'm so over-identified with being a good guy. Now, another thing that happens when you take this adaptation and become this nice guy to cover up anger, to cover up sexuality, to cover up anything instinctual, wanting what you want, wanting your own way. See, every human being wants his own way. Now, yes, in order to get along and love each other, we've got to negotiate and adapt. and find good, healthy ways to negotiate and fight fair. But to think that every human being doesn't want their own way, that's a law of self-preservation, that you want your own way. And 9 times out of 10, when I was being creamed for being selfish, what that meant was I wasn't doing it their way. You know, you're selfish because you're not doing it my way. Or you're weird because I feel uncomfortable. You know, I gave my example of you came in here with Roman togas on. Let's say I walked out here tonight, everybody had a Roman toga on and laurel wreaths in your hair and little propellers. You were holding propellers. I would feel uncomfortable. And when I am uncomfortable, what I tend to do is to say, God, these people are weird. Now, notice what I've done. I feel uncomfortable, therefore you are weird. See? It's that this is called judgment. There's some real strong language about not doing that in the Bible. But in human life, I mean, I blame you for my discomfort. I'm uncomfortable, therefore you are weird. I don't understand a woman like this. She didn't like my mother. Therefore, I got this weird wife. See, my mother cooked fried chicken, black-eyed peas, lima beans, mashed potatoes every Sunday at 2. My wife's family, they didn't cook on Sunday. About 3 weeks into the marriage, I'm thinking, I've got a weird wife. You get it? It's like you got this pair of glasses on that you're comparing all women with because you already got a woman in there. And it's the worst stuff that happens in our lives is this kind of judgment that we put on each other. Now, when you have to, when you can't be who you are, so what we really come down to is that the bottom line of all of this is when I can't be who I are, I can't feel what I feel, I can't be angry when I'm angry, sad when I'm sad, afraid when I'm afraid, guilty when I'm guilty, ashamed when I'm ashamed, joyful when I'm joyful, because in my family couldn't be joyful for more than a minute and a half. They say, we've had enough fun. These big people would bring these watches out, and they'd say, you know, we've had enough fun now, it's time to go to bed. God, I was just getting started, always just getting started. And it would be like, we've had enough fun. And so you know, like I grew up with my body, that's why I drank. See, man, when I chug-a-lug that first beer, I mean, did that energy start going, and I could dance on the top of bars and recite Gunga Din and talk to girls. God, this was like heaven. This was like medicine, and it is medicine. Every addict is seeking the medicine when you're numbed out, when you can't feel what you feel. When your anger is shamed, your fear is shamed, your sadness is shamed, your joy is shamed, you numb out. And then you're set up for addiction. Because the only way you can feel is with your addiction. So if you're a love addict, it's the flirting, it's the fatal attractions, it's the, the hyperventilation when you see him, her, it, them, whoever, whatever your deal is. But that's, that wonderful, I was telling them in the inner child, I got on an airplane that day, I look at this stewardess. Like hyperventilate. And so I say to my little boy, shut, we're not looking anymore. So I never made eye contact. That's very dangerous for me. That I know what that is. That's very, very dangerous stuff. But it's that, boom, seeing when you're in love with somebody, oh my God, is that mood altering. You just are out of your gourd. And the senses are heightened. Every sense is heightened. Smell is heightened. Sound is heightened. And so it's a wonderful attraction. So when you're numbed out, and see, we have a big, massive kind of thing going on in this country now called Love Addicts Anonymous. Sex and Love Addicts Anonymous. And, of course, sex, wow, is that ever a mood alterer? That glazes the eyes over. And it's not just the act of sex, it's the rituals. See, the major part of sexual addiction is in the rituals. It's being on the make. It's whatever your rituals are. They may be cruising rituals, they may be girly book rituals, they may be boy book rituals, they may be masturbation rituals, they may be going to singles clubs, with everybody in their lizard behavior. See, single bars are filled with people in the reptilian brain. You ever seen lizards shoot that thing out, that red thing out? Well, watch a guy walking in a single bar with tight pants and medallion, and he's shooting one of them things out, but it's another kind of ritual. It's like a ritual, though, and then so the woman over there kind of gives it this, and just stretching, just at that very moment she needed to stretch and scratch her back, and see, these are all mating rituals. They're mating rituals. This is fascinating stuff. It's very exciting stuff, too. It's like hyperventilating stuff. Alcohol, cocaine, work. So you can be alive when you're doing deals, and it's exciting, and you're putting things together. It's like you can be alive, but you can't be alive any other way. So we work with work-addicted families in Los Angeles, and father's sitting there talking, and he can't get in his feelings, and we look over and the daughter's crying, and this other daughter is withdrawn and lonely. See, they're carrying his feelings for him because he can't have his feelings. He gets all his feeling in his work. So the children have to carry all the repressed feelings. All the alienated parts are carried by the system. See, remember, in families there are no secrets. What that means is kids will act out the unconscious. Sometimes when Carl Jung, listen to this, when Carl Jung wanted to when he really got stuck with a patient, he'd go and analyze their children's dreams, because he knew that the children often would carry the unconscious of the patients. Now, that isn't always, but it's frequent that a child can be acting out. So a girl hits high school, she starts acting out sexually, and her mother's very prudish and over-identified with her sweetheart, nice woman part, although she dreams of massive hordes of Mongols raping her at night. Which is very interesting dreams when we see this very proper lady, with nothing, her nose is covered up on her body. She's so proper. And she says, well, a Mongol horde raped me in this dream last night. That's a very interesting dream. You see the polarities. It's the polarities. So nice people are very controlled and really are addicted to joy. It's a niceness in the sense that I'm using it here as an addiction to joy. It's like I have been in utter pain and be smiling at people. How's it going, John? Fine. Just whipping that back, fine. And everything okay? Oh, yeah, everything's okay. And just be hurting inside. Just be so lonely or so hurt inside. But, it's just it's a big frozen smile. And you see, in a lot of families, you are punished if you don't smile. You're not allowed to have your feelings. There's a no-talk rule in the family, so you can't have your feelings. And so, get that frown off your face. So you learn to freeze this smile. And you learn to have this kind of frozen smile. You walk around. We have to, like at the Meadows, they'll make, one of the assignments is they'll say to a person, you can't smile for 10 days. That's the assignment. And so you stop smiling around here. And you walk around and basically have to stop smiling because they know it's your con. See, because what happens here, when you can't have any of this, you can't have any of your dark side, what Carl Jung called your shadow, because it isn't really the dark side, but it's what our culture calls the dark side. See, be nice is the light side. Or if you go to church, there's this good behavior, but there's no bad behavior. It's unbelievable to me that churches have literally preached against anger when Yahweh is pissed off throughout the entire Old Testament. I mean, he gets so pissed off that he wipes out the whole species and starts all over. Now that's pissed off. And Jesus kicks the tables over, and Ephesians says, be angry and sin no more, and don't let the sun go down under your anger. I was amazed when I went in my 12-step program how much it had been affected by that. You know, that somehow anger was considered to be this terrible taboo feeling. And so really what happens is that we go into a false self role. And in sort of family system theory, whatever your role is in the family, generally in dysfunctional families, other than the scapegoat or the rebel. See, and a lot of the rebels are in treatment centers or they're in the penitentiary. You ought to see the letters I'm getting from penitentiaries all over the country now, out of that family systems series, where these guys are getting it that they've been acting out all the pain in these families. They're acting out the anger in these families onto society, and they're starting to get it. I just had two of the counselors from Huntsville here Friday, and that it's a priority in Huntsville to watch the family system films. Because, see, these guys are getting it. You ought to see the letters I've got from a guy on death row at San Quentin who's been watching these films and wants to help other inmates on death row understand how much they've been acting out. Now, but usually only one kid will do this. Like an alcoholic family, you'll have the alcoholic, the chief enabler, a lost child, usually a star, a mascot, and one scapegoat. The kid will scapegoat the whole family. Like when I did the treatment in Los Angeles for the Palmer Drug Abuse Program, and we did a lot of work with the families, we would find that the kid that was in treatment was always the most sensitive in the system and was acting out the pain in the system. I never once found a marriage that wasn't in trouble where their kids had gotten in serious trouble with drugs. Now, the other kids, though, will generally take the star, like I was a star in my family. I'm a star. And that's the president of every class, editor of the paper, straight-A student, nice guy, and my sister's a lost child. She's real nice, too. And so what we learn to repress the pain, repress our anger and our sadness, and be nice. It's like we over-adapted with that role. And why do you do that? Why will we do that? And then, of course, the culture is coming in.